Hey, this is Bryce Harper, and welcome to the Phillies Show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Phillies Show with Ruben Amaro Jr., Jim Salisbury. I'm Todd Zolecki. It is Monday, July 1st, 2024. First 3 days of life with the Phillies without Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. They went on the IL on Thursday. They are 2-1, and it's been kind of, I guess, maybe kind of what you would expect, guys, after losing those two. And then you have JT Realmuto on the IL. They get a incredible pitching performance from Cristopher Sánchez on Friday, shutout. They lose Saturday, not a very great game. And then Sunday, they just win a totally ugly affair. They commit 5 errors, but they come back. It's their biggest comeback win of the season. Trey Turner with a big hit late on his birthday. And it just seems like this is the way it's going to kind of have to be until Harper and Schwarber come back and Realmuto come back. They're going to have to lean on that starting pitching, and they're just going to have to try however they can to eke out some wins, even if they are ugly like they were yesterday.
Yeah, no question. I thought it was huge that they came up with that win yesterday, Sunday, even though, as you said, it was ugly. 13 men left on base. The errors were, just ugly. Fortunately, the Marlins were pretty much just as ugly. But, there was a couple little silver linings in there. I mean, Ranger didn't pitch well. The 2 nights before, they got excellent starts. They only won one of those games behind Cristopher Sánchez. So not a lot of runs on Friday and Saturday, but they did score a bunch of runs on Sunday. They did overcome a deficit. Again, there was an element of a gift in it. I mean, Tim Anderson makes that error on a surefire double play ball. It opens the gate for the Phillies to begin their comeback. But nonetheless, the middle of the Phillies order did barrel some balls up. Castellanos swung it good. He had 4 hits, right? I mean, he had a couple of really big ones. Bohm had a big home run. So the middle of the order, Marsh and those guys did come through. They did, bail out Ranger Suarez. So, and even, without Realmuto and Harper and Schwarber, you're losing a lot of slug. You're going to have to manufacture runs. And I thought, that 7th inning, Marchand, you parlay 2 walks, Marchand lays down a bunt. I mean, that was old school textbook baseball. Good job. And then Trey Turner comes up and drives a base hit to, really the biggest hit of the game. So though it was ugly, I think you take it because without Harper, without Schwarber, and with Realmuto being out as well, man, if you could play 500, a little over 500 without these big guns, I think you're doing pretty good given where you already are with where you have banked so many wins. And then you're going to get those guys back mid-July. And we talked so much about the trade deadline, but those are 3 big July acquisitions. So I'm okay, even though it was ugly and they didn't score a lot of runs early in that series. I'm okay with the way they got through it.
Yeah, it was a pretty good effort overall, just being able to stay resilient enough to stay in that game and win it. There were so many ways that they could have just folded because Ranger didn't throw the ball very well. He couldn't make the pitch with two outs. Marlins came up with a lot of big 2-out base hits, which are sort of demoralizing for a team. But this is a super resilient team. We've shown that time and time again from the 2022 season on. I think it's one of the most resilient teams I've ever seen. They've lost some tough games. They bounce back. They have a tough inning. They bounce back. They make a bad play. They somehow bounce back and win a ball game. And yesterday was not pretty. It was the ugliest win I think I've ever seen. But they figured out a way to put a W on the board under a tough circumstance. Lest we forget, I mean, they've also lost 2 starting pitchers. They lost Taijuan Walker and they've lost Turnbull. So not only have they lost their big guns, and I know those guys are down in the rotation, the 4 and 5 guys. or the 5-hole guys as far as the starting pitching rotation is concerned. I mean, still you're still losing some depth there. Now they're going to have to hope that Michael Mercado steps up on Tuesday and figures out a way. And they have that. It sounds really cliche. They have that next man up mentality, but that's the reality of it. I mean, guys are stepping up and figuring it out. They did not have very good situational hitting at times during the course of the weekend. It was a little frustrating to watch them do what they did, but then they'll come up with like a 2-out base hit and figure it out. So it was good to see, in particular to see Marshy bounce back over the last few days, to see Castellanos swing the bat pretty darn well over the last couple of days, and a couple of weeks actually. He's been last maybe month or so. He's been much better. So he hasn't been like a stalwart or anything like that, but he has come up with some big base hits and some big RBIs, and that's pretty important. He's won some games. He's done some things that have helped the ball club, and so that's huge. But you're right, guys. They've got to figure out how to win baseball games over the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and be able to sustain things until the All-Star break rolls around.
I was going to ask you, Ruben, you brought up Nick Castellanos, and I just while you were talking, I just looked up some of his stats recently because, I mean, I don't want to base everything off my Twitter feed, but man, oh man, he has one bad game and he just gets crushed on social media because he had such a terrible start and because of the way he finished the NLCS. And I just found a 3-hit game he had in May. So from May 19th through yesterday, he's hitting 275, 7 home runs, 25 RBIs, and 815 OPS. And I feel like with Nick, you almost have to just accept the fact that he's going to have some really nice games, and then the bad ones are just going to be really ugly. Is that kind of what it is with him now? Yeah. I mean, you just have to, as a Phillies fan, just to calm your nerves so you don't lose your mind every time. He's going to have a couple games in a row, maybe 3 games in a row, where he goes 1 for 12 with 6 strikeouts. He chases. He just looks totally clueless. And then the next 3 or 4 games, he's going to have a couple multi-hit games, 2 or 3 doubles, maybe a home run, and he's going to look really good. And it's like, this is what Nick Castellanos is. So, maybe this will help you relax. This is what he is.
Yeah, I think what's happened with Nick is that there's such a high expectation. He signed such a big contract, right? He signed for big money. So the expectation was that he was going to be a middle of the lineup, protect Bryce Harper in the 4-hole, have 25 home runs and 105 RBIs. And that's really not who he has been for the Phillies. He's had stretches where he's been okay, but he's been super streaky as he's gotten older. And I think that that's sort of part of it. He had a great, certain part of the season last year, makes the All-Star team in the early part of the season, and he sort of fades off at the end. And then really struggles in the playoffs. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the expectation for him is much, much higher than the actual production. But we talked about this in the early part of the season. It's not really how it starts, it's how he ends. And the fact that they're winning baseball games, I mean, that just becomes a plus later on. Like if he starts becoming a 750 to 850 OPS type player over the last, half of the season, then that's pretty damn good under the circumstances with the type of lineup, the guys like Alec Bohm stepping forward and really becoming a guy, and the talent, the super talent that they have at the top part of the lineup.
Yeah. He's a streaky guy. And I do think he thrives on confidence when he's feeling good about himself. And we saw him a little bit in the 2-hole. It didn't go well. I just think down in the order helps him a little bit. Maybe doesn't put so much pressure on himself. He had a big hit yesterday. He drove it hard, one hopper by Tim Anderson at short. I was really surprised. Anderson doesn't have a lot of range, does he?
No, he can't move. He really can't move. He's been a sort of a detriment to them. They try to, add a little veteran presence and a shortstop in there, and he just hasn't been very good all around.
Yeah, he the red light was going on behind him like a hockey goalie all day. They were driving stuff by him, but they were squaring it up, and I'm not saying these were balls he should have gotten, but they weren't even close. But I mean, Nick drives that ball for a really big hit. I think first pitch. I think there are times when his aggressiveness early in the count really benefits him. Men on base, if he gets a pitch over the middle, he's going to do some damage. It's when the pitcher, pulls the string on him early in the count, and he's aggressive. That's where the chase comes in, and all of a sudden now you're leaving runners on base. And those have been, really team-wide issues, the chase and leaving runners on base, really for a few years. I think when it happens to him, the glare is just a little more intense, maybe because of the way last season ended. I don't know. Maybe it's the contract, but if he could continue to build some confidence, because he has the last 2 weeks, he's been terrific. And even before that, as you mentioned, Todd, he's been a valuable, productive bat. I just think, sometimes we remember how the season starts. Well, he's been pretty good lately. He's been contributing. He's a really, really important piece because I still don't think they've made up their mind how they're going to act at the deadline. I still think a bat would be nice to get out there, but I also believe that if he's going to produce and have one of his good streaks in the second half, maybe all of a sudden the plan that they had on day one, which was this lineup's going to be deep enough to carry a Johan Rojas and get the defensive contributions from him while sacrificing offense. If Johan Rojas is indeed going to pick up his defense, then you can maybe do that with a marginal bat improvement in left field, somebody you can platoon. But Nick remains a vital piece on this team, and it's good to see him swinging it better.
Yeah, and the other guy that's really vital, I think, is Bryce Stott, because he hasn't swung the bat well at all. Yeah. And so, or like he can, like I think people know he can. And what I noticed, remember last year when they talked about him getting his top hand involved and him kind of going to that no stride? Well, I see that sort of happening with him being a little bit lazy with that top hand and sort of collapsing. And I feel like because he hasn't driven the ball out of the ballpark and the slug has not been really high, that he's almost starting to try to create that when he gets certain pitches to hit. And I think instead of just using his hands the way he was using them before, I think if he goes back to that mentality, I think he'll be fine. I just feel like he's trying to create air with his swing, meaning, launch angle. And I think he's missing some pitches that he really should be getting to. And he's not doing them as consistently as he was last year when he was using that top hand to drive the ball, keep the barrel above the baseball a little bit better. So hopefully he can make that adjustment because he's a good player, man. And they need him for that depth in that part of the lineup where where he needs to contribute more.
It definitely looks like I haven't really looked at any numbers, but it looks like he has not handled the fastball with the authority he did last year. And his hard hit rate is not what it was. But I'm a fan of hitters who use the top hand, line drive maker. It would be great to see. Remember Doug Glanville's top hand? And Hank Aaron had a top hand, and Rocco Baldelli had a top hand. Joe DiMaggio. I don't know why you would take it out of your swing. Guys like
Altuve, Chase Utley, Mookie Betts was one of the best when he first came to the big leagues, man. I mean, he had the ability to whap,
Chase's top hand was
Chase was great top hand. So I just feel like those guys, I just feel like he's the type of hitter that should be working to stay on top of the ball better and through the ball better. And when he does that, he has a lot of success.
What an acquisition he would be. If you could get, what you're seeing out of Nick now, it's just more of it. And if Bryce Stott has, a couple really good months, a lot of this team's issues that we think they have issues, and they don't have a lot of issues. They're a really good team.
Yeah.
But boy,
they're internal.
Some of the things they might be considering upstairs get fixed in-house. And you can maybe focus on a bullpen arm.
Or a starter.
Other areas, whatever, pitching, whatever you think you need to get to become invincible in the October tournament.
Jim, Stott against fastballs this season, batting .235. He hit .304 against fastballs last year.
There you
go. .382 slug against fastballs this year, .439 against.
Ain't you a good scout? Ain't you a good scout?
And he knows this, and I'm sure Kevin Long knows this. How do they remedy it? Is it simply just going in and working on the top hand in the cage, or is it being? We used to always hear Charlie say, "Be ready to hit the fastball."
I think there's two parts of it. I mean, mentally, you have to be ready to hit the fastball number one. But also, there are drills that Charlie used to work with me when I was playing in Cleveland and play very much. So I had to be ready for the fastball. I mean, that was the only pitch I was going to be able to hit. Anybody got a really good breaking ball, man, I was sort of screwed. So if I was going to get one, I better get it. I better get to it. So he used to put the tee up on for me, and he used to flip the balls. He used to do a lot of flip with me, but he used to put the tee it up so that I could attack the ball from up top, so that I can drive my barrel down, or at least be flat. There's a real push to work underneath the baseball now to try to create, air. But if you see all the great hitters in the game doing their Instagrams and on X and stuff like that, you see them talking about going down to the ball, right? So, and up through the ball. And so I think that's really, in this day and age with the velocity, the way it is, that's the most important part of your swing, I think, is working down to the ball and making sure that your barrel stays flat when you get to the hitting plane. So I think teeing the ball up and just working your hands to sort of not chop wood necessarily, but to certainly utilize that top hand so it works down to the ball.
Yeah, Ruben, it's funny you mentioned something on social media. There's one that's out there. I've seen it. It comes into my feed a lot because I guess I watch a lot of hitting videos. It was Juan Soto, Albert Pujols, and somebody else. They were all on MLB Network talking about hitting, and they all said, "I just try to hit down on the ball," and they were showing it. They're all showing their swings, how they're trying to hit down on the ball.
Yeah.
So
George Brett just had a great one, man. It was
really
good. It's a good one. And George Brett, he had a few hits, just a couple.
Yeah,
he had just a few.
He talked about the same hitting,
boom,
same hitting philosophy.
It would go.
Yep.
Jim, you said earlier, if the Phillies can just kind of keep their head above water, maybe play 500 till these guys come back. That's kind of what obviously, if they can play a little bit better, that's even better.
Yeah.
The last 19 games since they came back from London, they're 10-9. And there's been a lot of hand wringing about that, but they've only lost a game in the standings to the Braves in that time. They've only lost a game and a half to the Dodgers in that time. So they haven't been playing great baseball, but they get those guys back. And we talked a lot about the hitting, but really the 4 starting pitchers should be able to do that with these first 4 starting pitchers. Yeah. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do. We saw it, they limit runs and with these guys out, you're not going to score as many runs. So this team is still, the bedrock of this team is still starting pitching. Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, Sanchez, 2 lefties. And 3 of them could end up in the All-Star game.
Seriously.
And the innings they're getting from their starting rotation is refreshingly old school. It's just really
love it.
Great to see these guys pitching deep into games. And we just know the effect that has on a bullpen and the entire team. So starting pitching is still the thing on this team that keeps the motor running.
Qualified.
Yeah, no question about it. Good.
No, I was going to say just qualified wake up this morning, National League qualified pitchers. Ranger Suarez leads the National League, 2.27 ERA. Cristopher Sánchez is second in the National League with a 2.41 ERA. Zach Wheeler is third in the National League with a 2.73 ERA. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. No doubt. And the overall development of Cristopher Sánchez has just been insane. We've talked about it a little bit, but it's just an amazing transformation of a pitcher. But I think, as someone who was an ex-executive and someone who believed in pitching and, watched the Atlanta Braves win 14 straight, National League East titles because of their starting pitching, it is the one thing that can keep you in every single baseball game. You can talk about hitting all you want, and you can talk about a whole lot of other things. But if you can pitch it and you can play enough defense to support it, you have a chance to win every single game, every single night. Because if you are preventing runs, then you don't have to get a whole lot to win baseball games. Now, I do believe, I used to talk to Jeff Cooper about this a lot, long time trainer, about these pitchers because they're logging a lot of innings. There's going to be a time, and I feel like it's sort of happening with a couple of different guys where they get that sort of dead arm period where they're not as sharp. I saw that with Ranger a little bit. It was a little hot. I didn't see him be as crisp with his stuff. Wheeler's had a couple of starts where he's not been quite as crisp. Aaron Nola, same way, and he sort of goes in and out sometimes. But each one of these guys at some point, because they're logging so many innings, they're going to go through a little bit of a dead arm period. This may be that time, and that's why the All-Star break becomes so important. Yeah. But, those guys are not going to be able to sustain. It's not like they're going to be able to go out there every single time and throw 7 innings, even though it seems like they can, because – at some point your arm just needs to refresh. And, there are a couple of, starts, maybe a 10 or 15 day, maybe two or three starts where they're just not feeling the zip on their fastball, the tightness on their sliders, the arm speed on their changeups. And so you're going to have to fight through that little area. You just hope that they don't all do it at the same time. And that it happens to each one, like sort of individually, so that they can sustain some of the success they've had.
I was going to ask you about that, Ruben and Todd, like based on watching Ranger yesterday and looking at, some of his metrics. I mean, his spin was down across the board and his velo was down across the board. And I'm not alarmed because I understand the ebbs and flows of starting pitching. But I was going to say, do you think that's simply midseason dead arm?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I really do. I mean, and like every single guy, like think about it. The starting pitcher is going to have about 30 times to do his thing. It's not going to be perfect every time. Even Doc Halladay was not perfect every time. Even Steve Carlton was not perfect every time. It just doesn't happen that way. Even as good as these guys are, you can't expect them that every single start they're going to throw 7 innings of shutout baseball or 1-run baseball. But, I just, as a fan or as somebody observing the team, you just can't get too alarmed by the fact that, they might have a bad outing or two, because I'm sure that their arms will bounce back and be fine.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, his velo was down a little bit yesterday, so that could definitely be in play a little bit. But I think Ranger even said yesterday, was like, yeah, sometimes you just have a really bad day. So you have to expect that he'll bounce back. Schwarber said yesterday that he expects to be back after the 10-day IL stint, which would be July 9th. Rob Thompson said at some point over the weekend that he thinks there's a good chance Bryce will be back before the All-Star break. So they really only have to manage this for another 8, 9, 10 days or so. And with this pitching,
Bryce might be hungry to play in that All-Star game, because he hasn't played in one as a Philly, and he got all those fan votes. He might be hungry to play in this one.
I think that means a lot to him. I don't know how much he would come out and say it, but it is crazy or funny to think that he's never made the All-Star game as a member of the Phillies, as well as he has played, because of injuries. He didn't start the season last year.
And there was that one in Cleveland when they had all the banners around town, and he was on one of the banners.
Yes.
And he wasn't even there. It was interesting.
Yeah,
I listen. It would not surprise me. The man doesn't bruise and the man doesn't swell, and I gotta believe he's like bionic. And so yes. I just feel like these guys are going to be back. They are on the trip. I flew with the team yesterday. They are all of those guys, J.T., Schwarber, Harper. They're all here on the trip. They're staying with the team. So I got to believe they're a lot closer to being healthy than not being healthy. So I think they're on the other side of it, which is good. And I fully expect these guys. I know that Schwarber didn't even want to go on the IL. I mean, he was like one of those guys but they're being cautious with him, and they should. And they want to make sure that the guy's 100% so that they may make a run from September through November, that they're, going full bore.
What do you think? Do you think if the Phillies and the Braves right now were tied in the standings, for instance, do you think they would have let him play it out? Or do you think because they have this 8, 9, 10 game cushion, they go, they have some room they have a margin for error. So I wonder right?
Yeah, I think that helps a lot. And the fact that they have such good starting pitching helps a lot. If they were sort of muddling along and battling much more with the Atlanta Braves, and the Braves were playing better baseball, might be a little different. I still think that they typically in this day and age, you sort of err on the side of caution with some of these guys, especially with the timing of it, because you really do need to have these guys ready from September through November. It's just too vitally important. So there's sort of a conservative element to injury in this day and age, a lot more than it used to be. You know, back in the day, man, you didn't tell anybody you were hurt. Nowadays, you know, and it was good that, you know, that Turnbull went to Rob Thompson and said, "Hey, man, that pitch before my last one, man, I tweaked my shoulder. I just want to let you know." And they bounced him out of the game immediately. And it turns out it was something, you know, fairly serious. But at least he has time to come back. I think after doing some extensive rehab, I think that maybe he still has a chance to be a viable piece of this puzzle for the last month or so.
Who makes the all? So you talking about Harper wanting to play in the All-Star game. We talked earlier about 3 guys in the rotation possibly making the All-Star game. Bohm's probably going to make the All-Star game. You think there's anybody else that's going to make the All-Star game?
Well, I think Matt Strom had a chance to make it. And I think Alvarado had a shot, and I thought Hoffman had a shot. But
Yeah,
I don't know. I think Strom. God, he put together some stupid numbers. I mean, before the last day, had a couple of outings. He hasn't been quite as effective. He had two little clunkers, but or let in a couple of runs, but which is so rare for him to do that you're like surprised
he hadn't done it.
Yeah,
he hadn't done it.
I think Strom's got a chance. I do think the 3 starters have a chance, and you know, maybe even 4. I don't think Nola's going to slide in necessarily because he's down on the list. But I gotta believe the top 3 starters are going to make it. I have to believe that's going to happen. I can't imagine keeping them off. Like, what would keep them off? And so I think you got Harper, you got Bohm, you got the 3 starters. And then beyond that, I mean, Turner might make the damn thing because Turner's numbers are so much better than everybody else's in the shortstop position, even though he's had a really, really short, you know, he's missed a month or so. So, I mean, Turner's a possibility too. I mean, people want to see him.
Yeah.
He's the best shortstop, you know, offensive shortstop in the National League. Who's better?
And Mookie's down. Mookie's not playing, so
correct.
Mookie was winning the fan vote.
Had Mookie been in there, it would probably be Mookie. I think they got to take 1 player from every team. So like a guy like Ezekiel Tovar is going to make it probably for Colorado. He's like the only guy who would probably make it. So that's a shortstop. But then who else is there? I mean, I think is Turner number 2 on the voting?
He was probably number 2 in the voting. Yeah.
So I think Turner's going to end up being there too.
It could be impacted as well if one of the Phillies guys pitches on the final Sunday. That's going to
Oh yeah, no doubt. You've chosen, but not pitch and not be there. And other guys.
I'm fine with you know, my starting pitchers being chosen, tipping their hat and sitting down for the whole night.
Boom. Yeah, you wouldn't. David Montgomery wouldn't be very happy with you, but I totally agree.
Hey, Doc started in 20. Did Doc start in? Well, he started the 2011 All-Star game.
I think so.
Right? Yeah, he was all right afterwards. Come on.
That's Doc. That's Doc.
Going, tipping their hat, hitting the spread, and jumping on their private jet.
So we got some listener questions last night. You want me to run through a few of these before we sign off?
Yeah.
Only pithy, witty ones.
Only pithy.
Whatever
Okay. Yeah. All right. We can. I'll start with the pithy. It's kind of.
I'm sure there's some trade stuff on there, right?
Well, yeah. So, and this is kind of hard to say. This is a good one. This is from Dan. Who do you think is the highest rated prospect in play for the Phillies to trade at the trade deadline?
Ooh.
Now, I mean, you guys don't have the prospect list right in front of you, but I mean, off the top of my head, I would say that Aiden Miller and Andrew Painter. Yeah. Well, Andrew Painter are probably absolute no-goes.
No,
right? I unless you're going to get somebody like Juan Soto at the deadline.
I'm putting Crawford on. I'm putting Painter, Aiden Miller, and Crawford. I'm not
on your no-go on your no trade.
Because center field has been such an issue around here for years. You might have a guy who could, he's in time. He's going to need time to get here, but the guy might be able to hold that position down 7, 8, 9 years. I'm very reluctant to move Crawford. I am not moving Aiden Miller. I'm not moving Andrew Painter. I know Dave Dombrowski's aggressive, but he ain't moving those guys, I don't think.
I think he would move Abel, and I think he'd move Crawford.
Oh, you do?
You think he'd
Okay.
move Crawford?
I don't know that.
Wow.
But I mean, they're outfielders. Got to
Now,
find an outfielder.
Abel, I believe they would move Abel just because his development line has been slow. His development curve has been slow, and I'm sure there's some frustration. He's not throwing strikes, but every time I look at Cristopher Sánchez, I am reminded that it takes time with starting pitching, and I also know how important it is starting pitching, and it's awesome when you can build your own starting pitching and get them there on the low end of the salary cycle and get contributions from them. I understand they might move Abel. I am in no rush to move him, though.
No, not necessarily. Plus, his overall value is probably a lot lighter than it was. You know, is he going to get you? Is he going to get you like a blue chip player, like a bona fide player? And I don't know that he will necessarily, just based on his performance this year.
Well, especially if we're talking about when people talk about the Phillies need the trade down, there's a lot of talk about an outfielder that can, from the right-hand side, that can maybe give you a little bit more pop, the proverbial like 3rd/4th outfielder. That's Mick Abel seems like maybe a steep price for that type of player, right?
For me,
right?
Yeah, unless it's going to be a middle of the lineup type of a guy down the road or something like that you can like lock in for a while. You know, I don't know if there's a guy out there like that would be, you know, all that exciting. Most of the guys aren't having great years. I mean,
do we think Dave Dombrowski is going big game hunting or around the edge hunting?
Well, I think he's going to start with the big game. I think he might end up having to settle for small game.
Yeah, if you're not
the squirrels and the rabbits. No disrespect.
Try to juggle both of those balls
not
now.
Not the elks.
I guess it depends what happens come July 29th, July 30th, right? I mean, some team comes at you and says this guy's available, and is that? I guess that don't you have to resist that urge, Ruben? I mean, you were there. I mean,
it's fascinating under the circumstances. Listen, this is a team that's built to win. If there's a piece out there that I know is going to take us to the next level and put us in a position to, like, put us in a no doubt position. I thought that way in 2011, but that said, and then we got beat up in the playoffs. But if you have a opportunity to go get somebody that's really special to take it to the next level, man, it's tough not to make a deal like that, because it's win time, man. It's win time. Period. That's the goal.
A lot of questions about Whit Merrifield. Will they consider moving on from Whit Merrifield? Any chance they keep Clemens up and send Merrifield, or release Merrifield, whatever, when Harper, Schwarber, Realmuto return? I mean, Merrifield continues to struggle. I looked this up this morning. Out of 298 hitters in Major League Baseball that have put 100 balls in play, he is last in average exit velocity. Not that you necessarily need that number to see that he's not hitting the ball hard, but he is not hitting the ball hard. 83.4 miles an hour. He's batting 188, 560 OPS. And we've talked about this before. I've raised this before. It's not like he's on pace for 175 plate appearances. And come on, you can't expect Whit Merrifield. He's on pace for a little bit more than 300 plate appearances for the season. Seems like he should be hitting the ball a little bit better considering that.
Yeah, he might be in trouble here in a few weeks because he just hasn't shown enough. I mean, we're over the halfway point of the season, and as Ruben was saying, if you think there's one piece that you bring in, it's going to put you over the top. Well, on the same token, if that piece is in house and you need to keep him in the major leagues and it costs another guy his roster spot, I think you have to consider it.
So I think all I think about is if he's not the guy and he's not producing, then there's a guy like Weston Wilson that's out there that's starting to really swing the bat well, who can do some more things. So now Whit's not running as well. He's obviously not impacting the baseball as well. I love Whit Merrifield. I love the signing and the whole process of thought about getting him and what he means to the team. But as we talked about before, now he's going to get a chance to play all the way up through the All-Star break a lot. And I think this is a time to find out whether he can really contribute. And if he can't, then they may release him. He may not be a part of the team come, late July. I don't like to say that because it's people's lives you're dealing with and stuff like that. And he's probably still a viable Major League Baseball player. But at some point, you may have to replace him with somebody who's going to be contributing a little bit more.
Yeah.
Chris wants to know, this is more of a off the beaten path one. Favorite Harry Callis story? Says you've all interacted with him. A favorite Harry Callis story.
God. I have a lot of them.
Then we can say on the air.
Huh?
Yeah.
Some of them we can't tell, but there's a lot of good ones.
Let me just say this. I had the great privilege of being able to sit in the back of the plane with Harry Callis on the road trips. And there was only one guy that got to sit back there in Harry's spot, and it was Harry. He would sit back there and have a beer and, smoke his Newports. And, I would have a heater or two with him and just talk and just be with him. And to me, those are the memories and those are the things that really are special to me. The other quick story I will say that he made my very first home run call.
Oh, cool.
I hit it at the Vet. It was my first start of my career with the Phillies when Lenny Dykstra went down. I went 3 for 4 or something with a couple of doubles and a homer. And after I hit the home run, after the game, he had his call spliced and taped, and he gave it to me in a cassette tape, and I still have it. And, for years I would play it every once in a while just to sort of pump myself up. But it's just the coolest. It is one of the coolest things of those things of memorabilia and memories that I have, and nothing I will ever forget.
The one thing I will say,
go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
No, I was going to say the one thing I'll say about Harry is, you guys get this a lot too, is what's this guy like? What's this guy like? I can say that every single time I saw Harry interact with a fan, he treated them like they were the great, like long lost friends, super, interested in what they had to say. He would sign autographs. He would, take photos with them. Every single time. I never saw him walk away and go, oh my gosh, I don't have time right now. Sorry about that. I apologize. He made time for everybody all the time. He really enjoyed the relationship that he had with the Phillies fan base.
Yeah, he was great to people. Like Larry Anderson's great to people too. People come up and want to meet with Larry Anderson. He's great to everybody.
Yep.
He treats everybody very kindly. And Harry was the same way. I have a couple personal thrills with Harry. One, he announced 2 of my daughters were born in the summer, and he announced them on the radio when they were born. That was really neat. I wish I had a tape of that. And another time, one of my buddies was turning 40, and I called up, and he is a big Harry fan, and I called him up and said, "Hey, I'd love to get an autographed ball for my buddy's birthday. He's having a party." And he said, "Come on over to the house." So I drove over to his house in Media, and he took me in a little office, and took me in this little office, and he signed the baseball. But the office was just loaded, beautiful memorabilia, and I felt like I was in a museum looking around. And he had one of my stories on the wall the night Richie Ashburn passed away in New York City up at the Grand Hyatt, and then the Phillies were playing the Mets that night. They were having a series against the Mets. And they won that game 1-0, which was really fitting because Richie Ashburn wore number 1. Kevin Jordan had the big hit, Ruben's buddy, and that story and I was really touched by that. But and I was there the day we lost him in Washington. I can still remember the pain in Dave Montgomery's voice as he announced it, and I remember driving home from Washington that night with Paul Hagen and. Really, we just reminisced the whole way, and it was really, you had a pit in your stomach. It's just an honor to know him.
No doubt. I was actually like the first game of the season on the road for me as my GM, one of my GM debuts. So that was a pretty poignant moment for me, and really so sad. And I was there when Richie passed away. I was on the team at the hotel when I got the call for John Vukovic to let me know. I was like, wow, holy smokes. It was that was rough stuff, man. Rough stuff. Iconic people and iconic members of our fan base, you know.
Yeah, it's still cool to hear, out of here at Citizens Bank Park every time the Phillies hit a home run. That's awesome.
I used to love when he'd say ball one right down the middle.
Yeah.
He was so great.
Right so down the middle for a ball.
So let's end with this. This is Pat Kreitz and our buddy Sixto wanted to know another holiday weekend approaches. What are you grilling, fellas? Or as Sixto wants to be more specific, he says, are hot wieners on Jim's menu for the 4th? Because if you recall a couple of weeks ago, Jim, you were talking about how you had mini hot wieners up in Rhode Island that you would cook at cookouts, right? Yeah.
Well, I
nothing like a hot wiener, Jim.
You got to go to the hot wiener stand to get those, but they're something. These little stubby dogs with meat sauce, mustard, onion, celery sauce, steamed bun. But on my menu for July, I might get the smoker out and then
nice.
Have a potpourri of smoked meats.
Oh, fantastic!
Is that like Canadian smoked meats? Is that the kind of smoked meat?
I love Montreal. Todd and I used to love Montreal smoked meat. We used to stake it out late at night. Remember that?
Yeah, we did. We would go to this.
Todd even bought a T-shirt. Did you sell that T-shirt?
Oh my gosh, I wish. That's the only. It was a place called Ben's, and it has since closed down. But they had these great smoked meat sandwiches in Montreal. We would go there late night, and
I was a fan. I was a fan of the smoked meat.
Fantastic. I do not have that T-shirt. I think it got a little stained. Like you wore it too much.
The famous one is Schwartz's on
Schwartz's.
I forgot what street that's Saint Laurent.
Is it Saint Laurent or St. Catharines?
Saint Laurent. The Schwartz's and that's a great smoked meat, or as they call it in French, viande fumée.
Viande fumée. Ouais.
Only you would know how to say smoked meat in
I know the Subway stop, and I know how to order in French.
Nice.
I will not. Well, I'll be still in Chicago on July 4th, so I won't be grilling on anything. But I will try to get a Chicago style dog somewhere while I'm there. Those are great. In fact, Jim, a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about your mini wieners that you like, you talked about putting celery salt on them. So that day or that weekend, I actually went out and tried to recreate a Chicago style dog with a celery salt, and
What'd you think?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
celery salt on the dog.
It makes it hot, man.
Yes.
You want to overdo it. It's it's just a nice little
sprinkle.
Little sprinkle, little taste.
Yeah, absolutely. So
wait a minute. So what about the pizzas in Chicago, Todd? Are you gonna go with Gino's East?
I might try to do Lou Malnati's. I feel like is a solid choice. So I might try to go to the Lou Malnati's. That's the problem when you go on the road. You feel like you have to get a deep dish pizza in Chicago, and then you got to get a Chicago style dog, and then you come back and you're like, why do I feel so gross, out of shape? You know what I mean? The road,
little treadmill time. Wait for the tie.
I'm going to have to get in some treadmill time. So Phillies open up a 3-game series Tuesday night against the Cubs. Michael Mercado makes his first major league start on Tuesday night against Hayden Wesneski. Sounds like a real good Chicago guy. 2-4, 3.60 ERA. Hayden Wesneski. So then you have Wheeler and Sanchez on Wednesday and Thursday. And then they go to Atlanta. So big week for the Phillies, big road trip for the Phillies. We'll be back later this week to talk about Chicago and talk about the upcoming Atlanta series. So I'll talk to you guys later.
Smell you later, boys.
Smell you, Jim.
This is The Phillies Show. If you haven't already, please subscribe to The Phillies Show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. If you like what we do, give us a review. Tell a friend. Catch Ruben, Jim, and me on Phillies Nation TV, presented by Valley Forge Tourism. New episodes air an hour before every Saturday Phillies game on NBC Sports Philadelphia. Replays air throughout the week and on PhilliesNation.com. Get more of Ruben's analysis during, before, and after Phillies games on NBC Sports Philadelphia, on the Sports Radio 94 WIP Morning Show, and MLB Network. Read Jim at the All City Network at allphly.com. Find more of me at MLB.com, the Phillies Beat newsletter, and occasionally on MLB Network.